in a sense, you started a whole new company a second time. So what was that
I
second
had the
transition?
blueprint. I had the
Yeah.
blueprint. I already did it once with the other guy, right? So I knew exactly what was going to happen the second time. I knew exactly how to do it with better strategy and better tactics. Was I going to get around the processing? No, I've been shut down by every credit card processor, by every Venmo or PayPal. I've been shut down by them all. My social security does not work anymore for them. It was hard to get past those first 6 months of like, is this the right thing to do again? Does my family deserve this again? Am I just exhausted right now? Can this work? Are we going to be able to make this work? And we did, but it was hard at first. I think that being the right age and having the right outlook on life and knowing, like, I've been knocked down a lot. And actually, it's kind of fun to get knocked down, right? You learn so much getting back up. And people, I think, kind of commend you for that. And everyone learns from those situations.
You had said you were fired from the corporate world for being who I am. Like, tell me a little bit about that.
So I was at Moe's, and Moe's is owned by Focus Brands. And so essentially it's a corporate environment. And I've traditionally worked in non-corporate environments, or at least for people that are entrepreneurs, if you will. And so when you work at, even at a corporate environment where people are entrepreneurs, there's still a lot of leniency. There's a different culture that's been created. And Moe's had gotten to that point where they were purchased by someone else and the culture had changed. So again, me being who I am, I'm a very entrepreneurial minded individual. I like to speak my mind because I think that I'm in the room for a reason, so I might as well chat, right? And so, I think at the end of the day, when you're on the company retreat and your boss says, where do you see yourself in 5 years? The correct answer is not your job, so that I don't think that was very friendly to him. And, there's just, sometimes you don't make friends in every environment. Even if you are very successful, even if you win those trips to the Bahamas, even if you win the accolades of whatever, that doesn't mean that everyone is certainly on your team, and anything can change at any given time.
I wonder if that's a cultural thing with Moe's and who bought them, but it seems to be a recurring theme with businesses that when it's of a certain size and culture, it's like not everyone is necessarily working for the betterment of that organization or for the people internally. And it seemed like that might have been the case where your boss was like, or the people around you weren't trying to maybe support each other, or everyone had their own ulterior motives.
100%. I think at the end of the day, everyone has their own motives in those kind of environments. Those ladder climbing situations, everyone, it's like a reality TV show, I mean, people act out and aren't who they truly are a lot of times within those four walls, and it just turns weird sometimes.
Yeah. And I guess, I can see that as the entrepreneurial mind, like it doesn't often bode well. I noticed that for myself when I was teaching for 2 years. I was like, I've never been this rebellious in my life until I've been in like a real full-time job. I was like, it's just this whole other side. And that's when I was like, I probably shouldn't be a teacher. And then it was
like
after that.
Someone says, hey, do you want to take a day off? You want to skip today? You're kind of like, yeah, why not? It's okay, right?
Yeah.
And like when you're an entrepreneur and you're in your own thing, you don't do those things, right? You're very on top of it. So
yeah, and that other concept of, hey, I think I'm going to take off Friday. I'm going to take a vacation day. Like, well, you got to get that approved. You're like, wait, I wasn't asking. I was like more telling.
Yeah, I'm going to have lunch for an extended period of time because I want to. Like, I'm eating with a friend,
Yeah. I think the future of work, and I've heard this from other folks. This is not my original thought, but everyone's self-employed and working in their skill set for others. But I think it's very antiquated way of thinking that Corona has brought to light, where if you have a full-time job, like they own your time and it's not smiled upon to have a side hustle, whatever it may be. And I think that's wrong. Like no one should fully own your entire workday.
It's funny for them. I say them, the corporate folks. For them, the fun or the extra stuff is those team building things you guys get to do, right? And it's like, that is, but there's more that I would like to explore perhaps or do. I literally remember sitting with the boss that let me go as I opened up the 500th store in Manhattan for Moe's. We were sitting there one night, and we were talking about the future, and somebody else was with us, and they asked us, and I kind of gave my thoughts on cannabis in the future. And he said, I can't believe you have this conversation with us right here, right now. And I was like, well, I can't believe that you don't see the reality of that side of the fence, so why that's not a relevant conversation. So we're all business people here talking, right? So why wouldn't I? What, you want me to talk about candies and ice cream? Like, like we still like why not why not crypto and anything else, right?
Right. And when in hindsight, all that makes sense. But when before it's the thing, yeah, you get those people that are like, Joe, you're sounding crazy. You're talking about cannabis, dude.
In the South in Georgia.
Yeah. Well, I think, well, I want to learn more about, I guess, what happened after. Of you were saying you started your first cannabis company and an advertising company kind of simultaneously. So what was the transition like from corporate world to those other businesses?
You have a lot more responsibility on your plate from a financial standpoint, and bookkeeping and legalities of registering a business and opening a bank account and kind of doing all these little basic things that my background in marketing, other departments would typically handle, if you will, right? So you kind of take on more hats, obviously. But when you start your own business, you find yourself at 10 a.m. maybe dumping out the wastebasket or the mop bucket. And you kind of look down at the ground as you do it, and you're like, what am I doing at 10:15 on a whatever more? Yes, it is. That's actually, yeah, yep. You're supposed to be doing that shit at that point in time because that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing now. You are every department.
Yeah. What year was that when that first
So
came?
as an individual, that we went to church with growing up, we started a cannabis company. So it was about 2013, getting 2014. Colorado was going legal, and so a friend of mine, we grew up going to church with, said, "Hey, let's start a legal cannabis company now that things are kind of swaying that way." There were noises down at the Capitol of possibly a bill being introduced to help medical patients, and so we did a press release, a PR Newswire nationwide press release, and it stated we're giving away medical marijuana in the state of Georgia, despite state laws. So we kind of threw it out there. About 3 days later, the politicians that were working on the bill called us and said, "Hey, would you guys like to participate in maybe helping us create this bill, and or even maybe have just what the input is on the actual medicine that may be coming from it?" So we said, "Absolutely." I mean, that was our introduction into lobbying. Not everyone goes to college or business school and learns about lobbying.
Uh-huh.
So that was a quick introduction, kind of a cool thing, if you will. There's a lot of pros and cons, but there could be some really good use to lobbying to get things changed. So that was 2014. And we, kind of got a couple bills introduced, but we never got the full in-state growing, manufacturer, distribution. And we're still kind of there today, right? Patients, over 10,000 patients in the state of Georgia with 16 conditions don't have access to that medicine. And so that we're still waiting on that to happen. They're going to give out licenses to 6 companies here in the next year to start that process. But that was kind of when we were born. That was the first company. We started helping Georgia patients specifically because this bill was created. And so we were helping them get that medicine that they couldn't get. Parents with children that had to fly out west in wheelchairs, or MS patients that really couldn't operate outside their home. A lot of situations that, quite frankly, the state put them in a tough position. And so we took it upon ourselves to help them. We grew our company into a legal CBD company as well. And then in 2017, kind of out of nowhere, he kind of pulled out the rug from let's say, $3 million company with a full staff helping quite a few people. And so at that point, I pivoted, grabbed my sales rep, who I was a lifelong friend with as well, and we started 2 new brands.
Interesting. Damn, quite the journey. And because what's fascinating and keeps in my head, like there's enough risk of just starting a business, but like starting a business in an industry that's not fully legal federally, so it's like even more massive of a risk. I mean, back in 2013,
we were putting ourselves out there. There's no doubt, especially operating what looked like a legitimate brand, right? My background's marketing, so I was creating a brand and a communication strategy with our consumers and with doctors and with lobbyists and with politicians. So we were, doing a lot of different groundwork, middle work, we were doing all these different levels of work to influence what this industry could look like. And we still are doing that even today. But yes, lots of risk, lots of illegal things happening in distribution. But at the end of the day, I was willing to go in front of a court or a panel like nobody else was.
Got it.
We were willing to take the risk, basically, of whatever it was. And then we pulled the plug.
Yeah. Which it's like what people are talking about now. And you had mentioned crypto a few minutes ago, but like, it's easy now to be like, yeah, I should have gotten in on Bitcoin 2 years ago, or I don't know how to say it, like Dogcoin, whatever, DOGE, like those overnight millionaires. But like, Yeah, you look stupid if you're putting in 5, 10 grand before it's a thing. And so, I mean, yeah, you bet on an industry that now is the thing. I mean, and I just think it's nuts, like how far it's come even in the last 2 years. But I'm shocked that like 2013, 14, when you first got going, it was not nearly as close or like as open as it is now. Were there like a lot? Do you have a lot of haters? Or people are like, Joe, man, what are you doing, dude? Cannabis?
Yeah, of course, man. I mean, especially in the corporate world, or I still have friends. I think it's funny. I'll meet them in real life and they'll say, hey, I couldn't tell you congratulations online or on that platform, but hey, I really want to congratulate you right now. And I'm like, really? I mean, I don't even know how to respond. Thank you, I guess.
It's just,
But if
yeah.
you're that apprehensive about touching a like button on something I've posted, then I mean, come on, what world are we living in? The apprehension to that. Yes, people from day one. What are you doing? You got a new child being born. You know, you're doing. Isn't this a bigger risk to put your family in? I had more control of my life at the end of the day, right? I mean, I was controlling more of my life at the end of the day. No, it wasn't a risk in my mind because I loved what I was doing. I had a passion for it, and it was converting, everything I'd built up in my entire life to apply to this and do it really well. You know, if I was 25 versus 35 or 30, whatever, I think it would have been a lot different.
That does make a difference. And was that because of just being 35 and having a child and a family, or a combination of that and the industry?
Yeah, that and just experience in life, right? Just dealing with adults more and dealing with real life situations or business situations. You know, when you're in college and you're doing accounting, you're like, oh, this is cool. It's a spreadsheet with millions of dollars on it. This will never be real. And then you get in that situation, you're like, shit, this spreadsheet's just like we used to do with millions of dollars on it. And we're depreciating this and we're doing projections of 5 years, and you have to use all these new functions that you remember from college. Like, oh, it exacerbates pretty quickly. And so you have to have just a different mindset. My mindset's never been to run a small business. You don't ever want to own one subway. You want to own 5 subways. That's the growth. That's the leverage, right? And again, my background is with hair cuttery, with thousands of hair salons across the nation, Mo's of thousands of stores across the nation, and dealing with a lot of local entrepreneurs here in Atlanta to help with their marketing strategies. It's never about one. I mean, it is about the one in their community, but it's really about the 5 in that region, right? Or the 20 or 60 in that area. And that's really what our mindset is building a brand that transcends, a brand that you can put at the same level regionally as a Home Depot, a Coke, or whatever, as this becomes accepted, and we can become an industry leader in that regard.
So when you're looking at the region and that expansion, I know you've got, I think, 3 brick and mortars with Georgia Hemp
Yep.
Company. How does that look? Like if you're going to open something in Knoxville, Tennessee, do you
Sure.
keep it as Georgia Hemp, or what does that look?
So we have 2 brands. And what I learned in the last company was that everyone wants to launch a brand and get on your shelf or your website, right? And that's the game that we were playing before. So what I did is I created 2 brands. I created the brand that wants to be on the shelf or wants to be on every website, and that's called Symplleaf Wellness. That is our endocannabinoid fortification company that crosses borders and crosses over just the CBD. It's all over. It can be a legitimate cannabis brand by itself. So that's kind of our in-house brand, if you will. And then the Georgia Hemp Company, which is our shelf space, our website, and our distribution. So now I can distribute not only my brand and other brands, but I've got 70 SKUs all by myself, right? And so we're able to now distribute all over the country under the Georgia Hemp Company, a very friendly name, SEO friendly name, brand name. Symplleaf Wellness is a little bit unique and different, made up, and like most things are in our industry. So again, we were able to get that out there and brand it and not feel the pressure of launching that weird company while having a really easy, what I considered an easy brand to launch and get moving.
Okay,
So
so
outside the state, then I think regionally we could do the Georgia Hemp Company, but if I went outside the state, it would be a Symplleaf Wellness company. It'd be a Symplleaf Wellness store.
okay, that makes sense. Because and if I'm understanding, you're saying like the distribution side, it's like Georgia Hemp Company distributes the Simply Wellness products.
And anything else I want to distribute.
Yeah.
Right. So as the industry grows outside of just CBD or cannabinoid consumables, we're talking hemp shirts, talking hemp hats, we're talking hemp herd, we're talking pet stuff, right? And so the Georgia Hemp Company is such a broad brand name, we're able to go into a lot of different facets of the industry as it grows.
Yeah. And the SEO friendly thing, if you haven't subscribed, I have no affiliation to this newsletter. Stacked Marketer is where I get all my news. It's freaking sweet. They had something, I think 2 weeks ago, on this whole study that an agency did, or maybe it came from Google directly, that businesses where the local name was in the name of the thing of the business just naturally puts you into like just getting that SEO because of that. Like if you're going to open up a pizza shop in Atlanta, Atlanta Pizza Company or something like that. It doesn't sound sexy and it doesn't sound like super clever, but I kind of tend to get on tangents, which I'm going to eliminate. But
No,
there's a franchise in the DC, Virginia, like the and symbol, whatever that's called, the ampersand. It's like that symbol pizza, and I'm like, that okay, that's clever, and I'm sure someone spent a lot of time on that. But like, how do you even talk about that? How does that relate to SEO? And there's a difference between the fact, yeah, I think there's a difference between being like cool and clever and then actually having a sustainable business and a sustainable brand.
I like the local strategy of near me, whatever the company, like, vape pens near me, CBD near me. So I like when people do that strategy.
Yeah. It's that split second test when someone's looking at something and analyzing and subconsciously thinking, is this for me? Is this what I'm looking for? They see Georgia Hemp Company, like, that makes sense, versus some like random name that
Thera something or health or what, very easy. And again, my goal at the end of the day was not to be extreme cannabis or extreme medical or extreme whatever. It was to be the middle brand, the everyone brand, so everyone can come in. We can talk to everyone in a way that they can understand it, a great consultation, and essentially get them out the door with a product that's going to help.
Yeah. So. Well, and going back a little bit, I love your story, and I know how tough it is to kind of like start over, especially coming from that first corporate to the first cannabis company, but then starting over. Almost, I mean, it was not going to be the same as starting completely over because you had the experience, had the sales rep, but in a sense, you started a whole new company a second time. So what was that second?
I had the blueprint. I already did it once with the other guy, right? So I knew exactly what was going to happen the second time. I knew exactly how to do it with better strategy and better tactics. Was I going to get around the processing? No, I've been shut down by every credit card processor, by every Venmo or PayPal. I've been shut down by them all. My Social Security does not work anymore for them. But that is one of the biggest hurdles that we've had. But I had the blueprint, but to your point, it definitely, it was hard. It was hard to get past those first 6 months of like, is this the right thing to do again? Does my family deserve this again? Am I just exhausted right now? Can this work? Are we going to be able to make this work? And we did, but it was hard at first. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, looking back, it's always like, well, that sucked for 6 months, a year. I mean, those 6 months, a year when you're starting are long. It's a long ass time.
I was renting an apartment or a condo above ours as our office. And so it was just like a weird feeling. You're walking upstairs, you got makeshift stuff happening. You're just trying to launch something and you're like, this is where we're launching this. And again, those are all the great stories come from, but it's still weird to fall from a top place, right? You worked hard to get somewhere and then you fall and just to redo it so quickly. Again, I think that being the right age and having the right outlook on life and knowing, look, I've been knocked down a lot. And actually, it's kind of fun to get knocked down, right? You learn so much getting back up. And people, I think, kind of commend you for that. And everyone learns from those situations. Hopefully I taught my daughter something. Maybe she was too young to even understand it, but she'll know the story eventually,
Yeah. She'll see that and be like, hey, remember that time that, the office was above and maybe you didn't see dad that often. Who knows what that work-life balance is like, which is always tough.
Well, and that's a tough thing. I was, my wife and, I always tried to make sure I was there at dinner at 5, especially, when she was young. So you do, even now I want to make sure I'm there at soccer practice at 5. So there's just, you have to make the time, and, quality of life's the most important thing. So they're going to take the grunt of it even more than you are. So it's trying to balance that for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess, would you say that, like, we'll say about 3 years, I'm seeing this new one that was started 2018, right?
So we're
Which,
right at the end of 2017, October. Yeah, we reincorporated 2 companies, worked with my designer on a couple brand development, all the colors, the images, the pick this, the pick that, the names on this. So we went through those processes pretty quickly. And by the next year we launched.
yeah.
We had launched the websites, we were procuring products.
Would you think like that 3.5 years into it where we're at now, like, do you feel like you've made it, or that you've kind of reached that same level that you want to be at, where it's not as much about the grind, but now it's about growth and expansion and whatever your future goals are?
Yeah, definitely not stopping, definitely not feeling stuck, or there's always growth. I'm here every day, whether I'm redoing the back room, make it more flowing, right? We're looking for a new spot for production. It's definitely growth, and it's all of it. I mean, I'm not stopping. I don't have the mind to stop right now. We have a short window to shoot the gap, and we've got to shoot as hard as possible while we have the opportunity. So anything can happen. So we've got to shoot the gap.
Right. Strike while the iron's hot, because I mean, who knows? And also set yourself up on this, what I think to be a massive wave of this emerging industry. I mean, is that what you're working at, and what you see it when you say shooting that gap of
Yes,
being on the
continue
forefront?
building a brand, continue building a brand that someone may want, right? At the end of the day, that serves value in the industry, building a brand in ourselves. So if we're not ever at this company anymore, we're still a value from a leadership standpoint, a thought leader in the industry. Hopefully we're developing a staff that will go out and sing the praises of what this culture was, right? I used to work at 790 The Zone, a sports talk radio station here in Atlanta. And the culture there and what people know about it is historic, right? They're not around anymore, but what they did to break barriers and be different and push the envelope was awesome. And I was proud to be part of that. So I'm hoping that I have the same respect coming out of, my folks, and that respect is in the industry when people hear about where they came from.
So what does that look like then, as far as that brand building and then that authority building for yourself and your company? I'm just curious, like from a marketer's perspective as well, like what do you work on to help build
We
that?
continue to develop new products with new cannabinoids as they come out and they're accessible, right? So it's past the THC, past the CBD, CBN, CBG. We have to be a steward and a communicator and an educator for the industry when new things come out, so we can make people comfortable in using those items. We have to continue building the brand and acting like a marketing company or a communication company, and continue doing the sports events, continue to do the music events, possibly having more stores in the market, making sure our product is in other stores where we're not. We partnered with Starship, that's 20 locations in Atlanta or in Georgia. That expanded us quite a bit where we couldn't go, right? So continue to make those partnerships. And so what does the next 3 to 5 years look like from a growth perspective for this brand? What we know is that there's no koozie yet invented for this industry, right? Lots of opportunity happening.
Because it's still in development. I mean, I wonder if we were to look back at the history of, I don't know, you'd say like, beer from where it's gone, of, like my parents talk about Coors Light. When that was like a thing on the East Coast, it was a big deal. And then maybe even how craft beer has been the last, I don't know, 10 years. And so any of these markets where there is no blueprint necessarily, except to look at other industries, but then see how do you apply that for your own industry, your own products, and your own company. And I bet that's pretty fun to work on.
It is, because you're right. We don't have a blueprint, but we do, right? We can look at what the FDA requires for packaging and follow that. We can look at the food industry and see how they're handling stuff and mimic that. So we can try to be the best, responsible business people that we can be by looking at those things, knowing there's nothing around us right now. And we are kind of setting the tone at some level, and there's responsibility behind that,
And responsibility in terms of what you were saying with like the education and doing it right.
Correct. Look, there's hey, let's put a dispensary in every corner and sell everyone weed, right? That's great, but are they going to come back if they don't have a good experience? My first question to most people is, what's your milligram tolerance? I don't know. Well, that's an issue. We're going to have to start at step one, right? Like, okay, no more than 5 to 10 milligrams, and we'll work from there. And so just, again, it's a slew of questions, question behind the question, right? We want to make sure that we are facilitating this in the best way possible. We want to be the best stewards for the industry.
Mm-hmm. And that's, it was interesting, probably timing wise. I think a day or two ago, you posted on Facebook of, like a year or two ago, you're like, here's my setup. You're like, no tablecloth, no, it's just like this ragtag.
And
Was that one of your first
I was
events?
being silly. I was being silly, but yes, that was probably our second event after launching, a few months before that. Spring had happened and things were, yeah. So I was being silly, but at the same time, sometimes you got to celebrate yourself.
Yeah, no, dude, I totally, I'm like, I get that. I see that. And I've seen that in my own stuff where I'm like, that was me a couple of years ago. Well, I can do it much better. But that's part of that's also like your outreach and your marketing strategy that sounds like you're still doing and getting out to events and music festivals or music shows and sports. And I guess the obvious question, how has that changed with Rona?
Oh man, the last year stunk, right? We've created a lot more content for digital, right? We've had to push a lot more, get a little bit more creative, but they're coming around. We've pushed where we could. We were as safe as possible when we were allowed to go out and do things. But we're now back out doing golf events. Yeah, we're back out doing sporting events. We're back out doing some music events. We're at a lot of breweries. We're a lot of little small events, which is great. So we're ecstatic to get the ball rolling back on that. I mean, that's our bread and butter, is communicating and touching and engaging with folks.
Yeah. And that, do you do anything with influencers? Like that's a big topic now, and some people have had mixed results. So I'm curious if that's a thing that you've touched on.
I don't like paying people for stuff. Again, my background's in marketing. If you're not legitimate in your messaging, then I don't, most consumers know. And so if it's not Snoop Dogg, if it's not one of my athletic friends that I know from my 790 the world that I know are legitimately using the products I've been giving them. I mean, I have got ex NFL players that are legitimately using this, that are loving it. They are my best spokespeople, right? So those are my influencers. I like the ones that are tied to the family versus what we call tastemakers, I guess, versus paying somebody random for the deck they just sent me and how many people are going to help me and whatever. I don't like it.
I get that. Well, and it's more genuine.
Correct. And that's what I want my brand to be. I don't look, is it nice to pay for reviews on YouTube? Sure. It can get you a lot of growth. That's a growth hack, right? I can hire every influencer in Atlanta to post some stuff. Great growth hack, right? I don't know. I think over time, what happens next week when somebody else is paying them?
Right. And that gets old. Like if, an influencer who looks at themselves as, I mean, if that's what they do full time, they got to make money from it. So if it can wear themselves out, like, well, this is same person touting another product. Who gives a shit? So
yeah.
Well, and that's like what people try to get to, like that shortcut, that hack to get what you already have of those relationships.
The best hack I ever had, the New York Times.
Tell me about that.
It was about 2 months ago. I had a guy call me from the New York Times, said they were doing a story on the new Delta 8 THC. And so derived from hemp, converted from CBD, it's kind of a gray area. But essentially the Farm Bill in 2018 made every part of the plant legal except for Delta 9. So Delta 8 THC, very similar to Delta 9, which is what we all know as illegal and what we've experienced most of our lives. So anyway, Delta 8, we're selling the shit out of it. We're infusing it into everything. New York Times calls us. I give them some quotes. They come and take some pictures. I didn't think I'd be one of two people in the entire article. I figured I'd have a couple quotes, maybe something, right? Something small. Article comes out on a Saturday morning, end of February. And I think my website's being hacked, basically. I'm emailing and texting everyone. Hey, what's going on? We just went from 10 to 50 to 100 to 500 to 1,000 to 3,000, right? So what's going on? My web guy goes, hey man, your New York Times article hit. Shit. Okay, it's not just mine. There's got to be other stuff in it. No, you're one of two people with your picture and a direct link to your website to purchase. So over the next month, we probably did about 6,000 orders from across the country. We, broke our system, which we were a small business and we're no longer a small business, which is cool. And this at the same time is trying to open our third location. Everyone ordered gummies, and the dichotomy of where we're at in today's world of I click a button, I order it, I want it tomorrow. It's not like back 20, 30 years ago where if you read about something, you wanted it, you went to your local distributor and you asked them. And then that guy or that person, that woman would call their distributor and say, hey, you're getting a lot of people asking for the new X. Can we get some? This was completely different. This was a direct click link to my website to purchase the website I just rebuilt, thank God. And they bought 5,000 bottles of gummies that took me a month to fill. We did $500,000 in a month. Now, the best hat is the New York Times.
Yeah. And you didn't even pay for it. I mean, I would have to guess they called you from the years and years that you've been lobbying, been putting yourself out there and been establishing yourself as just like, dude, I don't know, you want to talk about hemp and cannabis? Talk to Joe at Georgia Hemp Company. He knows what's up.
So somebody at Leafly gave him our number, said these guys down in the South have been doing this for a while and they're cranking out on here, and people come on our website either asking for it or looking for it, giving reviews on it, yada, yada. And so I just kind of went from there. And again, being in marketing, being in PR, you have to take advantage of those situations immediately, right? You can't you can't call back tomorrow. You got to call them back now. You can't wait 2 days. You don't schedule anything. You do it immediately. And so that was part of the strategy as well, is no matter what comes our way, we take advantage of it immediately.
Damn, dude, hell yeah, that's awesome.
Well, then, and again, 2 weeks ago, Newsweek.
So that's still to be released or something?
No, that happened 420 week. So I came out the week of 420.
Oh, damn. I need to do a deeper dive into the Google on this stuff and just see it.
So the front's around the front. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Just a new customer. Dude, that's awesome, man. So you're I guess you talked about the future, the next couple years. I mean, is it just new stores? Is there a franchise model that may even exist, or is that even something like you just want to keep
We looked, and we investigated it early on. Doesn't cost a whole lot when you finally get to the level of being able to do it, and I think people would buy them. After working at Moe's, I don't know if I want to babysit entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have their own minds, and when you kind of tell them what the deal is, and they go, "Hey, what do you think about?" I'm like, hey, guy, the contract is kind of, you do what the document says. I love ideas, but right now we're trying to, launch your franchise. And so we can't have this back and forth. And that's what we found kind of early on when we started to investigate this. So
right. You are?
At least for right now. I mean,
yeah.
I think there's a shorter window on this than people think.
Okay, I would bet that you would probably, in those franchise models, attract people who are like, well, this is an investment and I'm just going to buy this. And it's like, well, dude, you always have to work for something. There's not a lot of free.
Or you have a management company, right? You have a management company that is operating your however many franchises you run in the country.
That makes sense. It's interesting. You always learn about these different niches that just.
So Moe's is quite unique. I mean, the guy who was the CEO at Focus Brands owned the most Arby's in the country. He owned more Arby's than anyone, right? He basically told Arby's corporate what to do at the end of the day. And basically he had his own, high rise and operations and finance and accounting and, market, every department that operated his Arby's, his 300 Arby's or whatever it was. And then those individuals you see will jump into the new thing. I want to buy some Moe's. Hey, I want to buy the pizza places. I want to buy whatever the next category is. And they just continue operating these franchises on a very high level. They're their own restaurant groups, if you will.
Yeah. Wow. I've not even thought, and I have heard of folks, maybe like when you hear about like Shaq or Peyton Manning who own like God knows how many Domino's or Papa John's that, well, yeah, then you have like each store needs a GM or needs part-time staff. They have their own.
Yep. So just like we're doing now, every store has a manager. Every store has a staff. Eventually, once you get to 3 to 5 to 10 stores, you got a district manager. Then you start hiring trainers and a marketer. And so, essentially, you've got a small operation, right? And once you have that machine well-oiled and running, you can pivot to take on new responsibilities.
What were you saying about this, like the short window? You said there's a short window for this.
Yeah, I think hemp, I think CBD, I think cannabis, I think the guys, the regulations. I don't want to call it a pseudo cannabis economy or market, but we're selling hemp flower to smoke, right? We're selling this Delta 8 to compete with Delta 9 as gummies, as oils. We're doing all these things. The regulations will come down eventually to start squeezing us out. They will have to. The FDA, it's like all nutraceuticals, right? Not necessarily approved, lots of regulation, but those guys are becoming they became more squeezed out over time.
Do you think that'll change if on the federal level it is just the recreational side is just open and then it allows you to go
Well,
into these?
everything's semantics. Oh, what's just open mean, right? Nothing's
Yeah,
just legal, right? Milk isn't just legal to milk and serve, right? Everything has regulation. And so no
yeah.
matter what the industry is, it's going to have regulations, it's going to have red tape, it's going to have all these things you're going to have to do to participate at some level. And right now, the regulations are so exorbitant that you have to be one company that handles everything from seed to sale. These multi-state operators invest in billions of dollars to do everything to grow, extract, manufacture, package, and distribute within each individual state.
So would that then lead to only the Altria, Philip Morris's, what RJ Reynolds to
Parallel, all these big, what they call multi-state operators, MSOs. And these guys are continuing to buy or acquire other brands and grow or merge. Yep. So these guys will own everything. Now, hemp's a completely different industry, but even that, Delta 8, CBD, all these things always will threaten that industry at a level that when this thing gets to that level. And that's why pharmaceuticals will be really the cash cow. It's not a dispensary on every corner. It's what these pharmaceutical companies can do with individual cannabinoids for humans to live better lives. It's not buying joints and infused colas on the corner. That's not the cash cow. I mean, it is for us as we see it right now, right? Let's invest in this. Let's see this company grow. Let's see them sell a bunch of products to a mature market that's been mature for over 1 million years of users, and they're going to crush it because what are we? We're a consumer-based economy here. We consume no matter what it is. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But medicine, nobody wants to fucking talk about it. But these big pharmaceutical companies are going to be the ones that develop it, synthesize it, and make us healthier through cannabinoid research.
That makes sense. And I would hopefully better than, I mean, I don't know much about like, what do they call it? I mean, whatever, like Oxycontin and these like
all
pills.
these things that tear your liver up. We just had an NFL player pass away from his liver failing because he was on opioids his entire NFL career.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. So and hopefully it's just a better.
Yeah, we have people after the age of 30 that are taking Tylenol, ibuprofen, all these NSAIDs that are just tearing their livers apart over 50 years. Why are we doing this? And again, if we're doing this here without any regulation, what do you think pharmaceutical companies think about that? At the end of the day, big picture, right? Right now, they don't really care. Once this thing becomes legal, they can put their money in the bank and they can really put research funds into it. So again, I got to shoot the gap and put as much in there so I can go to Costa Rica eventually, you know?
And would that be selling it to like a larger big corporate company or some other dude that wants to take it on? Or
yeah, I think if somebody wants to give me a bunch of money, I'm going in a heartbeat, right? It'd be nice to ride this cow out as long as I can. But at some level, the Georgia Hemp Company, again, no matter what, even if I run it to the ground, has some brand SEO to it. There's something there that people want.
Damn. So it's almost like, well, I guess, I mean, any business has that kind of timer. I think that's what makes entrepreneurs like tick in a certain way where you're like, dude, I gotta get in when the opportunity's there. Nothing is guaranteed because you see how hard it is to work in any industry when it's you having to create it and make stuff happen. So maybe it's not all that much different.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to pivot and do something more relaxing, right? Like open a cannabis cafe. Wait till the laws kind of play out, right? I can do something more fun, you know?
Yeah, and as opposed to, well, I guess whoever, maybe if I'm thinking of like the folks that are making the vaccine, it sounds like they're gonna be the ones doing the research and doing the medical stuff. Altria types are gonna be doing maybe I don't know, joints for lack of the recreational maybe?
Yeah, you'll have a lot of universities involved with research and these big pharmaceutical companies, especially internationally, involved with the research. Yep. And then you'll have the guys focused on purely the recreational market, opening stores and selling as much cannabis, right? Growing as much weed as possible and packaging it in whatever form it is, whether it's an edible, a beverage, or smokable, and selling as much as possible. At the end of the day, that's the only goal for a consumer-driven product, right? More Coca-Cola, more bed sheets, more widgets.
Yeah.
That's their only goal, right? To please the people that invested. And you can't have ever losses. You always have to have growth every fucking year. So it's just, whatever. It's stupid. We're putting all this pressure on these new companies to perform, and like, it's just the dumbest stuff. Anyway.
Well, and then when you were saying like if one of your things being just opening up like a cool chill cafe, would that kind of be the next phase of if that gap ends and then everything that you're doing now is kind of into the bigger places, you can still operate within the niche.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Stay where I'm at. I used to make business plans in college about weed, right? I'm where I want to be. Yeah. Now it's how do I stay here and navigate? And that's what you see with people in industries as young entrepreneurs. They phase out of that first business, that second business, and they keep riding the wave onto what's next. Is it consumer goods that are made from hemp? Is it food for pets? Is it, I don't know, but we're going to follow that path. And as regulation eases up and as more opportunity exists, cannabis fucking cafe.
Yeah. You're just kicking it. Maybe cashed out. Like, all right, now I'm just living that.
That's right. Maybe it's a sports cannabis gym, right? We dive more into the lifestyle aspect of the industry. And that's what people want. People want lifestyle.
There's always a lot of comparisons between weed and alcohol, and like just how alcohol is such a thing with restaurants, bars, clubs. Is there that much parallel with it of what you could conceivably do with it?
So old school culture is take it home and enjoy it, right? Because that's what we are built to. That's how we were built, right? It's illegal. Don't go out in public. Your eyes are red. You smell. At some point, I stopped caring, right? So I think the new generation, my employees that are in their 20s, they'll post themselves on TikTok or Insta, whatever, smoking joints and shit, man. And I'm like, yeah, I've never done that. Like, what's wrong with you? So will people get more comfortable going out and doing it? Yes, because we are social people and we like to, and I think consuming cannabis is a very social element going back millions of years. So yes, I do think that will become a very big part of it eventually, but there has to be a social conscious change there because majority of Americans have grown up in the old, crazy, scared world of cannabis.
Right.
Reefer madness.
What?
Reefer madness.
Reefer madness. Yeah. And when you see it get depicted on TV shows or movies, like, oh, the mom accidentally eats a weed brownie and suddenly she's going berserk. Like, do you know what that's really like?
No. One recommendation from a good entertainment standpoint to learn about the industry is a show called Disjointed, and it's on Netflix. It's a full 2 seasons. It's comedy, one of those 30-minute sitcoms, very well written. And you could probably teach a class on every episode, whether we're talking about legalization, influencers, every topic that we've kind of gone through, banking, medical use for all these things. Everyone was such a great, fun, educational kind of I could teach a class on it, but Disjointed would be a great recommendation for people looking to kind of get a fun insight to the industry. What kind of like where we're at.
Yeah. I find it so fascinating just because of growing up and what you were saying, like, yeah, it's you gotta hide it. You do it behind closed doors, you sneak off and come back and your eyes are red. But now it's almost like, well, there's that war on drugs from the 80s or maybe early 90s. It's like, well, this is kind of like at least part of it ending, and maybe what the implications of that are for culture in the US, the rest of the world, where if US has gotten it, well, everyone else may follow suit, and all the benefits that could economically, medicinally, I don't know, anything else.
What stinks is we're actually late to the game. We've been doing research for over 40 years. Dr. Raphael Mechoulam found the endocannabinoid system. He discovered it. He discovered our CB1 and CB2 receptors. He did tests on lab rats because that's all he could do, but to the point where the Israeli government said, yes, this is a viable medical solution. And so the past 20 years, Israeli medical patients have been able to use cannabis in controlled situations. They've had businesses grow, the technology's grown around it, and they have they're a leader in the world, right? They're influence in GW Pharmacy, the big pharmaceutical company out of the UK that developed the first seizure medicine approved by the FDA here in America. There's a chain, there's a link to going all the way back. And so there's stuff happening and just got to recognize it. What stinks in America is we always think that it has to be on the FDA to say it's okay. We're our own people. And that's kind of going back to being an entrepreneur is we're our own people. We don't need people to tell us what to do. You can build your own structure. You can decide what goes in your own body, and you can decide how you take your own health on your own wing. And so we're more in that era because of the access to the internet and information. And we're able to spread that now. We can, and people are learning a lot more.
Are you familiar with Graham Hancock? He was on Joe Rogan. Like he's been on Joe Rogan multiple times.
Okay.
He's an author, and it reminded me what you were just saying of that freedom to act and to do things. He was on Rogan and he talks about, he's like, I kind of for years was just smoking. He was always referring to his cannabis with this cool English accent. He's like, yeah, I was smoking cannabis like 12 hours a day for decades. And then I stopped because it just got too much. He did ayahuasca, and ayahuasca told him he needed to stop. But he said, what I love about America is it's still kind of whatever Schedule 1, I don't know the specifics at the federal level, but he's like individual states have joined together or collectively made it legal, Colorado being one of the first. And so it's a growing movement. It's just like, you can't deny that progress and what the market wants, what the people are wanting.
Yeah, and that's just it. Is we're now able to make our own decisions, and we can look at the education. People can do their own research and find it in more places than just 8chan. It's not just on one message board. It's all over the internet. It goes back millions of years to every. Look at this next time. Every time they find an old million-year-old skull or body, the statue always has weed in it.
Really?
A dead million-year-old person that's been preserved in the ice always has cannabis on them. Always. Never doesn't.
That's something Hancock talks about. Dude, I'll send you this thing, man. It's one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. Because he talks about cannabis historically, millions of years, exactly what you're saying. He's like, human history has been around a lot longer than 10, 15,000 years. And that's kind of his whole premise.
Who are we? How arrogant are we?
Yeah. Dude, I love that. I'm pumped, man. I'm pumped to see, I don't know, just keep seeing what you're doing and where you're at. I know we've already kind of, usually I'll end this with like, man, where do you see the next few years, where you're going? But we've kind of touched on that. So dude, I've been meaning, anytime I'm in Atlanta, I'm like, dude, I need to hit up Joe. And just anytime I'm in Atlanta, it's like crazy busy. I'm like, weekend, just like family doing stuff.
Love seeing all your adventures as well. And, look, I'm just hustling. I'm trying to impress and make everyone happy that I'm doing whatever I'm doing.